Okay, I should be live. Hopefully everybody can hear me just fine, hear me 5 by 5. I'll give a couple minutes for people to come in and we will get started. So again, just sit back for a second. I don't play a bunch of music at the beginning of these things or whatever. I'm just going to jump right into it here in a minute. And so hang around for just a second as I do some stuff behind the scenes for a quick second, and we will get started in just a moment. Be right back. Okay, welcome everyone. I'm still doing a couple things here in the background, a couple last minute things. I wanted to get a couple of the graphics ready, but what I'm going to do is make a video that's going to cover some of this. But what we're here for tonight is going to go over some of the information that has apparently popped back up over the last couple of days or few days. And the reason why it's come back up to the surface, and the reason why I say it's coming back to the surface, is because apparently this story was reported on by Doug Papa back on October 3rd, I think, of last year. So he was actually the first to get this information out. And subsequently, after that, what's happened is nothing. He got the information out there, and the powers that be, the people that the attorneys and what have you, no one really shined a light on it beyond that, which which may or may not be an issue. So that's what we're going to discuss tonight, and over the next probably 30 minutes or so, or 45 minutes. So, but I'll go over some other things too, so we can kind of give a guideline as to what we're really talking about here. And pardon me, I just literally walked back in. We had some situations happen outside, and I had to take care of it. So here's where we're at. First off, I want to make a big disclaimer here. Tonight, we're not going to offer any legal advice. So if you ask a question, we'll try to answer it to the best of my ability. I do have a couple of guests that will be coming on, probably in the next 15 minutes to 30 minutes or so. But I want to be clear that the information that we're giving you is not something that's to sway your opinion as to which way you should go as far as whatever. If you're involved in the settlement, you need to talk with your attorney and make certain that whatever decision you make is agreed upon between you two. This is not, in other words, this information is not something that you should run to the attorney and say, hey, hold the horses, stop everything, I need to change. So just want to make that clear. Pardon me while I turn around here. So what we're dealing with right now is we have a judge who came on board the settlement talks as one of the two mediators that were chosen to work with the settlement, and to not necessarily, a judge as a mediator or just a mediator is a very different position from that of a judge or a lawyer or what have you. The reason why I say that is because a mediator does not really have a power to change the course of a settlement or anything like that. They're just there to make certain that everything's done properly and what have you. And, I don't want to belittle the position because it's extremely important, but I also don't want to make it sound like the information we're going to give you tonight means that everyone needs to go back and unwind this whole thing and, stop the settlement and hold the presses and all those kind of things. So I just want to be very clear on that. So as we go forward, keep that in mind. So what we have in the new information that I've gotten the last day or so, and pardon me, I'm not looking at the chat right now, so I won't be able to answer questions for a few minutes because I just want to get the first part out so we can get moving, and I'm out of breath because I just came in from outside. So the situation is this. We have a retired judge who began working for a mediation group, ARM, and took on this case. And one thing I want to be clear about is the judge, or former judge, Jennifer Togliatti, is an extremely well, and she's well appointed for this position. She's an extremely good judge. I'm not saying anything derogatory towards either of the two people involved here, because that's not the point. So I just want to make that clear. This is in no way a dig on her or towards her father. The problem that, as I see it, that may be an issue, or it may not be an issue, this could be all a bunch of nothing, is that the father of the mediator is, as was reported by Doug Papa, which I didn't see it back in October of last year, but he reported exactly correct. The father is a vice president, or was at the time, vice president of MGM Resorts International, and under the surveillance and security side. Now, at the surface level, when you look at this, obviously a lot of you have heard about this for the first time just in the last day or so. So there's that wow factor of, oh my God, what does this mean, and why were we made aware of this, and all these different things. And I felt the same way. And in looking at it from a reporter and a person who's, got a lot of time invested in this with a lot of people and a lot of emotions and stuff like that, I don't really view myself as just a reporter anymore. I'm kind of in it with you guys. But at the same time, I look at this and I see, how can this not be considered a conflict of interest? How did this not pass, or how did this pass the sniff test and get beyond the first point of order, which would be a recusal, where the judge would normally say, hey, my father is the vice president of MGM Resorts International. I think that might be a conflict of interest. I recuse myself, and done, and you move on to the next one. We went through this before. We went through about 6 judges a while back. And so here we have Jennifer Togliatti, whose father is former FBI agent. He was formerly head of or director of public safety for Nevada under a different governor, and then came to work for MGM, basically at Mandalay Bay, and was there from 2007, I think, or 2008 through 2000, or up through 2019, sometime in that range. But it covers the dates that are important to all of us. And so when this went through the mediation process as to determining the people that would mediate this case, you have 2, people that were chosen that apparently the attorneys agreed that this would be okay. But if you read the Nevada rules for the mediation process, it's a little murky in that area, because a mediator is not viewed exactly the same as, say, a judge would, where you would call for mistrial and all kinds of things. But there is a section that I'll get into that covers this particular situation, and it's pretty clear. And I'll paraphrase it now, and I'll try to get the graphic up here in a minute if I can actually catch up. As you can tell, I'm trying to catch my breath. But what we're looking at is a scenario that is, the way it's written in one of the documents is written by Paul Harry, who's another judge in the same department. And it basically states that any judge that has and I'll read it verbatim here in a minute, but a judge that has a situation where either they themselves are directly connected to the parties of the litigation, or if they are indirectly, but through a close family member, what have you, the same situation. We're not talking about somebody that knows someone that works there, or they have a relative that's a cook or parks cars, or is a dealer. We're talking about a judge whose father is the head of security for the very entity that is part of the litigation. So, and part of obviously the settlement at this point, because it never went to trial. So, like many of you probably right now, without me even looking at the chats, I mean, it's pretty much that information is kind of scary to look at and to try to move forward. A lot of people may have a lot of questions about, well, what does this mean for me now? Does this derail the settlement? Should I go do this or that or the other thing? That's a decision that you need to make with your attorney. But to be honest with you, I think it's a non-issue. I don't think it's something that's going to really just derail the whole thing. I don't think anybody wants that anyway. It took too long to get to this point. So I just want to be clear. This is not some rogue reporter out here trying to derail, something to make a name for myself, because that's not what I'm about. And people that know me know that. So I'm going to try to bring this screen up if I can, but I need to send a link to someone. So if you can hold on just a moment, chat amongst yourselves, and I'll be right back. And I apologize for this, but this all just came up just in the last few minutes. So I want to make sure you got the most up-to-date information. Be right back. Okay, I am back, and I'm going to try to look into this chat here. And I'll say hello to everybody. Hey, Michelle. Hello, CL. Hello, Pear. How are you? T. Andrews. Hello. And Justin down there, and scrolling back to the top. So here's what I'd like to ask. If anyone has a question that's specific to this subject matter, we can probably go out of the gray box here a little bit. And I am going to bring some guests in that will have even more information, so hang around for that as well. But we're going to get deeper into this and try to get to the meat of it, because it is kind of an odd situation to have it this late in the game. So, and thank you for HVAC for telling everybody to type questions in all caps. I'm going to scroll down here, and if you have a question, type it in all caps, and I'll try to get to it as we wait for possible others to come in as well. Now, the scenario, and again, we don't want to make it seem like this is, we're saying that either the Tagliattis, the father or the daughter of the judge, are we have an issue with. We don't. I've looked at both of them. Their records are impeccable. Absolutely, probably the best people for those particular jobs. I do have some issues with how security was handled at Mandalay Bay, namely some of the ERTO team that they were supposed to have. I don't know if you guys remember this, but Mandalay Bay had touted that they had a task force, a kind of like their own internal SWAT team back in, God, I think it was September of 2017, that they had mentioned that they had a tactical team together. They call them ERTOs, Emergency Response Tactical, whatever officer, I think is what it was. And that team was essentially their internal SWAT team. And they were there to take over a situation exactly like this. And like many of you, back in the very beginning of the investigation, that was one of my first questions as well. Was, hey, what's going on here? And what does this mean that didn't occur? What we got, however, was LVMPD, who got there obviously, in some cases fairly early, and they were on the 31st floor, and one of the officers froze, and we're all familiar with that story. But so the issue I would have is, if I had any issue with George Togliatti, would be some of the situations that were not handled in a way that we all would think would have ended this situation a lot earlier. So that's a scenario that, if this would have went to trial, that would have been played out that way. So back to the other, and again, a quick disclaimer before I start bringing guests in. It's important that, again, anyone watching this understands that this information has been out, apparently, because Doug Papa had it back in October of 2019, and apparently the attorneys, this is the gray area that I'm still getting answers on. And at this point, we're going to try to come back with actual responses from the attorneys. But one of the attorneys, or actually a couple of them, I did talk to directly. And what was stated to me was this: the information got them, and they knew the information before, or at the very beginning of the mediation. The belief was that everyone listening to this that may be a part of the settlement did not have to have that information given to them. So, in my reading of the Nevada law, I'm going to try to read that directly to reads like this. I put the graphic up, but for some reason, this giving me a hard time. Impartiality is also addressed in the terms of conflicts of interest, presumed antithetic to impartiality. Big words there, I know, but it'll make sense. The model standards state a mediator shall avoid a conflict of interest or the appearance of a conflict of interest that can arise from involvement with the subject of the dispute or from any relationship between a mediator and a mediation participant that reasonably raises a question of impartiality. So it means reasonable. And we'll discuss that in a minute, what reasonable means. I think we're well beyond what reasonable would mean. A mediator shall take reasonable inquiry. If that information was not put out to the attorneys, which the only piece of information I don't have is whether or not the information was given to them in the beginning, or if it was given to them because someone prompted that to be done. That's a question that I have. Let me know if the signal's any better. I'm just moved to a different location. Does it sound okay? Wow, I missed the last 4 minutes. That's crazy. Okay, can you hear me now at all? Let me know. The signal should be better. Okay. All right. So if anyone, I'll watch the chat session here a little better here, and that way we can make certain that if that happens again. and I'm going to bring in a guest here in a second, but let me go back over this one thing. I started to read the part here directly from the law, and did you guys hear any of that? It's the only thing I hate about doing these things like this live. It's not as fluid as it would be with the story. So I'm going to turn this into a graphical thing that you guys can refer to as well, because sometimes doing this off the cuff and trying to do it with information that I just received 15 minutes before I went live, because someone got wind that I was doing this. Okay, so are we? Just give me an copy and breaking up then, but I need to know how it is like right now. I moved to a different location. Let me know if we're okay, if we're 5x5 or what have you. And I know there's about a 15-second delay here, so I'm going to try to quickly do this so we can maneuver on here, because I know I don't want to bore you guys to tears. So here we go. I need to know if you guys can hear me fine. Thumbs up. And I just saw what was probably part of that. Somebody was connected on my hotspot. Okay, so all right, so everybody, so you kind of, when I read that stuff off to you, you kind of got the gist of what it was, correct? Okay. All right, do I need to read that back over again? Because what I can do is I can obviously put links in the description and stuff like that once this is over, and we can go back and read it. But the gist of it obviously got through. All right. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring on a guest. This will be first guest. This is the person that brought it to my attention before I found out that actually Doug Papa had this information out before. So the person I'm about to bring on brought it to my attention, and so what we're going to do is we're going to see how it affected him. Now, here's something else. The individual we're about to bring on has also pulled himself or opted out of the settlement. So we can talk about both subjects, but we got to be very careful as well, because keep in mind, as you guys know, the settlement is still ongoing, and I don't want anyone to do anything that's going to jeopardize any part of whatever you're doing. So if you're under an agreement to not say anything, don't divulge anything, don't do any of that. So I just want to be very clear. Do not do anything that's going to hurt or harm your own settlement. Okay. So just want to be clear on that. So here we go. And I'll bring in, you ready there, buddy? Here we go.
Hello?
That is Roger Keenis. How you doing? We
Hello.
can hear you. I can hear you.
All right. Cool.
How you doing, Roger? Can you hear me?
Yep. Hear
Good.
you
How you
loud.
doing,
Doing all right.
Okay, good.
You were a bit scrambled there for the reading.
So I kind of gave you a quick interview. Go ahead.
I was saying,
Go ahead.
You were told at the first couple minutes of reading that, but I've already read it. And I will give to Doug Papa. I appreciate him bringing that information forward. I'm pretty sure I'm the one that actually passed it to him, but the credit don't matter. You know, he's done a hell of a job.
Roger, Roger, turn your video off. Roger, turn your video off. Just turn the camera part off, and it'll just go to a blank screen. That way we can, because the bandwidth with YouTube and everywhere is pretty much choking up here.
I don't have an option
just
for video.
you see the little, yeah, click on the thing where click on your icon there, or the thing in the back room, and then where you'll see a camera thing with a line through it. Just click that, and that'll probably make our signal quite a bit better.
All right, hold on 1 second.
Yeah, see in the bottom part of the screen where it shows you. There you go. Okay, perfect. So we got a letter R there. So that should be a little better.
All right. Sorry about that. All right. So, like I was saying, I appreciate Doug Papa bringing that forward. I'm pretty sure I'm the one that actually passed the info to him. But like I said, the credit of all this, you know, it's irrelevant. You know, I appreciate everything he's done, because he's done a hell of a good job going through all the evidence and reporting a lot of this stuff to the people when the mainstream media failed to do their jobs. So I am grateful, and everybody should be grateful to him for doing the amount of work that he did. At the end of the day, like I said, my name was never important, but what I had to say was because of basically, and I know we said we would keep this short, but the video that I've proclaimed from day one is legit. It is, and But essentially, at the end of the day,
that was actually how we met. Was your video?
We've gone round and round, but and we can disagree. But at the end of the day, we all have to have the same goal in mind, and that's to protect the victim, get to the truth, and get these people a fair settlement deal. And that means everybody. And I said that from day one, that it was very important for all of us to stand together. And they've tried to divide us, unfortunately. You know, I'm not knocking any one lawyer or my lawyer. You know, even though I
don't mention names or anything, but you know,
there's a couple I'd like to call. I think they
we'll keep that one for a later one. But let me ask you a couple questions here. What was the you know, because you basically went public, letting people know that you have opted out of the settlement and what have you. So what is the predominant factors that have, and don't mention in dollar amounts or anything like that, but what are the predominant factors that that pushed you out or made you think that it's not, whatever it is that you thought, what was the main reasons to pull out?
Well, first of all, and I can go through a short list of them real quick, and they're real simple. For one, the truth needs to be told. 2, security needs to be changed. 3, I would say that the people needed a fair negotiation, and nothing about this was negotiated from my standpoint. 4, Sheriff Lombardo needs to resign immediately because he's covered it up. And the FBI needs to be reprimanded too in Las Vegas because they've failed to report information that I gave them back in November 12th of 2017, where I explained what he did. And we can disagree and we can debate on all that, but the truth
can't debate on the reason why you did it. So that's your reasoning for doing it. It's your reason.
Yeah. At the end of the day, these families deserve the truth no matter what. No matter how ugly it gets. This was never about embarrassing anybody, but the people that chose to cover this information up to protect themselves and throw everybody else under the bus, basically, and take what they could get, they've done a disservice to the uniform, to the victims, to their families, and put us through a lot more hell than just that night. It wasn't just that night where it ended. There's been a lot of shady shit that's gone on after this. The corruption, which is what got us in this situation to begin with, and what Paddock was doing, because he was going after these guys. And at the end of the day, you know, these people need to be taken care of, all of them. And I'm not saying I don't have an exact dollar figure. I have something in mind, but I can tell you the insurance policy cap ain't it. So let me explain why, specifically why I opted out. When I read the article just before the announcement was made, I actually found out what the settlement was, what the amount was before everybody else. And I went to the lawyers and called BS. I got an email back asking me to be quiet. I went quiet for a little bit, but I didn't like it. I didn't trust it. I also found out about the judge, and I went to the lawyers, and I raised holy hell. I said, this is a conflict of interest. I got some emails back saying, oh, no, everything's okay. And mediation had already started. So none of this was disclosed prior to mediation starting like it should have. And anywhere I've read, this should have been disclosed, along with, you know, ask the question, do any of these lawyers or law firms involved have any money invested in any of the casinos or in the MGM specifically that might be a conflict of interest? You know, I mean, these are questions that weren't asked by the media and haven't been asked and need to be addressed. But let me go back to my specific complaint. I raised holy hell about it with the lawyers. Then all of a sudden I get a letter from my lawyer disclosing what I had already talked to him about and asked me to sign. I went ahead and signed at the time, but I already knew it was kind of null and void because they had already breached that duty to my knowledge. Maybe I might be wrong. The judge was a private mediator or a private judge under ARM. Even under ARM, from what I've read under their own internal policies, that conflict of interest should have been disclosed. And I got the argument back that basically there's no conflict of interest. oh, by the way, me and my partner, we've even play tennis with the judge's husband and her and this and that. I said, well, why wasn't that disclosed to me prior to? Because that is a personal relationship. I said,
Right.
this is a little all too cozy for me, which is exactly the problem with the sheriff and MGM and the casinos and all the money and Brian Sandoval going to work for MGM, George Togolati going to work back running the Department of Safety under Sicily Act. I mean, there's a whole bunch of problems with the conflicts of interest going on in Vegas and honestly in our country. But it's a problem. But I basically got brushed off, and I didn't like it, and I wanted to say something. I did try to speak out at the time, and I was basically asked to be quiet by the lawyers. So I
Right.
that. But at the end of the day, here's where it goes to. When I read an article on Robert Eglett getting in front of everybody, and he basically, the week before, I read an article where MGM came out with the $800 million, and he said, quote, he said, not even close, no deal, not even close. And then the next week on October 3rd, when he got up and gave a press conference, he got on there, and nothing had changed. Mind you, let me discuss this. Security had not changed, no matter how much they want people to believe that it has. The facial recognition and shot spotter, those are all after the fact. Paddock didn't have the record, it wouldn't have mattered. And shot spotter is after the fact. There's been technology out they didn't want to pay for that is non-invasive, that wouldn't impede traffic, that wouldn't stop the average guy from coming in with a gun that is law-abiding, but would stop a guy from coming in with 23 suitcases full of guns or bombs. So the technology is there. They just don't want to spend the money.
Right.
Next thing you got to talk about is, so nothing changed in security. Never was an apology given to the families. The money was the bare minimum of the policy threshold. So what did we get? Why all of a sudden did Robert Eglett get giddy as he sat there and basically, I thought he was working for the MGM. I think most of us probably did because we didn't know if it was our lawyer speaking or theirs. I'm not saying anything, but I'd like to know what made him so giddy that he changed his tune.
Right.
Was he paid something separate that we don't know about? And I'm not going to make that accusation, but what I'm saying is, if you're not going to
so you make the accusation and say you're not going to make the accusation. I love it.
Because you know what? If they didn't disclose the improper relationships before, how can I trust them to disclose something that might be important? Because nothing changed. So what changed his mind so quick? I mean, were they all getting black cards to the casino and free hotels for their family? Because he's going to take all his family there. I mean, it's all gravy now. I've seen nothing that changed that would make me believe that something somehow changed magically in their behavior. And James Marin leaving, I was on his butt from day one. I mean, you can go back through all my tweets from day one. I've been on his butt the whole time. I've been on Lombardo the whole time. And they might be great individuals, but this situation stinks to high heaven. They know it.
Mm-hmm.
They should have stepped down a long time before. Joe Lombardo might be a great guy, but there's a lot of conflicts there, and it goes really deep. And I promised you I wouldn't go into some of them, but maybe I'll get that chance later. But they need to answer for this stuff because this goes far beyond money. There's a principle to the matter, and it does matter. And I don't want to see it happen to another family later on because they failed to do it. And the reason I've been fighting is from day one, I know of a mass shooting victim from 2007 on their property that they never paid out. They won on foreseeability and they covered it up and left her high and dry and did nothing for her. They didn't even refund her hotel stay. They lied to her aunt and said it didn't even happen on their property. And then they drug her through the mud. The guy's sitting in prison. He died in prison. Then you got Kieran Dunbar, who 3 years earlier in 2014 in Mandalay Bay, they got caught with all the rifles. So how many times have to happen before something changes? And I don't even know if they got any fines from the fire department for the security failures, because now George Togolati, and he might be a great guy. He's a former FBI agent in charge of organized crime, retired, that went to work for them. He's running the Department of Safety that overlooks the fire department and the highway patrol. I mean, so if there was gonna be a fine, or some kind of activity for Campos' incompetent self, who walked to a fire exit door and it's locked, which they don't lock. Instead of calling it in immediately, walks up the elevator down the hall, walks past the food cart with the cameras on it, goes and hears the drilling sound, calls it in, and then walks the hell away and walks past the food cart, but he didn't see anything.
Right.
And here's the other factor. While they're all harping on Hendricks being on the 31st floor,
Mm-hmm.
well, let's talk about the security operations manager and the two outside bike patrol officers that were on the 32nd floor for almost 4 minutes, 4 volleys while we were getting shot at, and they were all armed and did nothing. So nobody's answering. And then they went in and doctored the audio videotapes to sync them up, and that's why nobody seems to have the video evidence from the camera above 32-135 that was not out. They said 32-134 was out, but that would reconcile with my video that says that the window was shot out at 9:49, 16 minutes before, and they did nothing. And that would explain how two outside bike patrol officers made it up there before any internal security hearing the same radio traffic over the radio. So they've got some questions. They've got some questions to answer. I hope to help somebody get some answers.
Well, let's bring Doug. Let's bring Doug. Doug just came in. Just so everybody knows, Doug Papa is author, former security at several of the casinos. Doug, you can introduce yourself as well. He's a reporter, author for a lot of articles. I think it's over 140 or so articles he's written on Las Vegas alone for the Baltimore Post Examiner. So welcome aboard, Doug. It's nice to see you, buddy. See if he's got his mic on there. Can you hear me, Doug?
I hear you, Mike. I'm getting a delay.
No problem. If you want, click the camera off, and that'll save the bandwidth. For some reason, YouTube is way low on bandwidth at this time of night. So if you want to run without the camera, that'll actually free up some. There you go. And floor is yours. I hear something in the background. Sounds like a TV. But to get everybody back up to speed, Doug had sent me a message and told me about the article that he had back on October 3rd of last year, which basically is the exact same information that I'm putting out right now. How I missed that, I have no clue. But Doug was the first to bring that story out. And he, as he has done with the many stories, there's a ton of stories that Doug has come up with that he was the first to report. So Doug, welcome to the show. If you can hear me, let me know if you read me 5 by 5. This is the first time I've had connection situation.
I can hear you, Mike, but I'm getting you in double. I'm getting you saying things twice.
Oh, okay.
Can you hear me?
That's weird. Yeah, I can hear you. I'm going to move to another area. I don't know. It's hard to tell if it's on my end or if it's on the YouTube end. So I will move to a different location because I might be getting interference there. So let's see here. Yeah, section. All right. This hopefully will be a little better. So if you can hear me, let me know. The wonderful power of StreamYard. Let me get to another location. We'll work that one a different way. Let me mute my mic here for a second. And Doug, you can go ahead and talk if you can hear me. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm getting your conversation, and then 2 seconds later, I'm getting the exact conversation like it's being sent twice.
Okay, that might be someone having a microphone on in the background. So I don't know if you have a different monitor on or if Roger is. Roger's not in the room. Let me pull him back in. Roger, turn your camera off and I'll pull you in. But yeah, Doug, go ahead and introduce yourself and what you know about this particular part of the overall saga that we have here with the with the judge and what have you. And I'll tell you the information that I've gotten over the last day or so. It's a little bit different, a little bit updated with some of the attorneys letting me know some of the other issues that they've had. What is your take on this? I mean, do you feel that the judge should have recused herself, or are you happy with the decision that the attorneys went with? Yeah, I can hear the delay even on your end. I'm not sure what that's about. But Doug, go ahead and start talking. We can apparently hear you fine when you start. Just go ahead and take over until I figure out what's going on my end.
Okay, I don't know if you can hear me, but everything I say and you say is getting doubled 2 seconds later.
I'm thinking maybe it's possible do you have a different screen open on in the background possibly?
No, I'm direct on Google right into YouTube.
Okay, then just go ahead and if you hear me saying go ahead, just go ahead and because I can hear you fine.
Okay, this is okay. It's a little unnerving because when I talk 2 seconds later, I'm getting everything back I just said right on top of me talking.
Okay, I'll turn my sound down just in case it's me, and then I'll bring Roger back in a minute. Okay, but go ahead.
It's not good on my end. I'm getting double. I'm getting a delay, and then 2 seconds later, I'm hearing everything you say and I say again. It's like I'm talking to myself and it's coming back. I don't know why.
Okay, the only thing I can think was just make certain that you're on the same device that I know that you're in other words, it's just one device you're using, and you don't have like one screen so you can monitor chat and then one so you can do something else. But either way, if you want, turn whatever is making the sound, turn it maybe down a little bit, and that way it's not as loud, because I can even hear it. It sounds like it's a speaker or something on the outside that might be doing that. Or I can bounce out and bounce back in, or you can bounce out and bounce back in. We'll see how that plays out. But either way, if you hear me, just go ahead and go forward. And and I know it's a pain in the ass to try to rule out the double talk in the background, but try as you can, and we'll try to figure it out.
Okay,
And I'm guessing you have, if you have YouTube open, then just if you have YouTube open in the background, then that's the problem, because you can just use the link that I gave you to come in here. You can just use that. You don't have to have YouTube open at all.
Okay, hang on. I think that may be what I just.
Yep.
Okay, hang
just
on
close YouTube.
Okay, I think that's working. Can you hear me?
Yep, I hear you just fine.
Okay, I got that's a problem. I had the 2 links opened up.
Perfect.
Okay, so I don't know what we were talking about, but
no worries. I'll just re-ask you. You had broke this story first back on October 3rd. That basically, it was at the bottom of one of your articles. So I don't think enough people saw it to where it may have made more sense, or it may be a non-issue anyway. So, but the thing is that it does, obviously, when people hear it, bells and whistles go off, because it's a very striking thing to hear that the judge that's overseeing the mediation of the settlement has a father who happens to not just be a cook or something at Mandalay Bay. He's a vice president and head of security and surveillance. What are your thoughts on that? Just because you've been in the industry, you worked in casino security. What are your thoughts?
I thought it was a conflict of interest. And yes, Roger was one of the people that told me about it, but I heard it from some of the people that I was talking to and some of the survivors and the families of the survivors that were bringing that to me for some time. I couldn't verify it even when Roger, I like to verify and vet what's given to me. And I end up doing that. And what I believed it was to me and to a lot of the survivors and the families, they thought it was a conflict of interest because George Tagliati was not only the vice president of security and surveillance for MGMRI in charge of Mandalay Bay at the time, October 1st, 2017, when the massacre occurred, but he's also a retired FBI agent.
Exactly.
And so you got a retired FBI agent. The FBI was in the middle of this investigation. And then you have his daughter, who was Judge Jennifer Tagliati. She had retired earlier in 2019 and went with the company. And I don't know if the company was hers or was another company, but she was in a mediation company. And then she's appointed as the mediator. Now, what I found out was there were so many attorneys involved in this because there was thousands of lawsuits. So there were attorneys all over the country and Canada, all over the place involved in this lawsuit. They picked Robert Inglet and some of the top attorneys. I think there was like 5 of them, because obviously you can't have 500 attorneys in mediation sit in a room. It wouldn't work. So all the attorneys got together and agreed that the biggest attorneys handling the most cases would be the ones in charge of how this case was going to go. And from what I found out, verified, was that those attorneys are the ones who picked Jennifer Tagliati, and they all agreed to that. Now, when I say all the attorneys, all those 4 or 5 attorneys, Inglet and those. Now, whether all the other attorneys knew that, I don't know. I spoke to some of them, and some of them said that they did, but they didn't have the input in it because it was agreed by the main attorneys. Does that make any sense?
Yep. That's exactly the same information I got yesterday, and I double confirmed it with a couple of the attorneys, and that they felt like they were out of the loop, partially because they were out of state. Some of them were in Texas, you had Chicago, you had California. And so each of the attorneys, basically let them run with something that would have to deal with local procedure and may have a variance of law there. Because obviously the mediation procedure there is, ADR is what I think the parent procedure is, but then you have ARM, which is the company that was where she was working to come in to do the mediation and what have you. So they have some different rules or whatever, but they go by a set of standard of code of ethics that is pretty much standard across the board, and which is what kind of made bells and whistles go off in my head. And that as soon as I heard that, immediately, I've seen this situation before, but this is staggering. I mean, this is just mind-boggling that someone would not recuse themselves immediately because of it. In my opinion,
it gives the impression to the people that I spoke to, some of the survivors and the family members, and that there was a conflict of interest and something. Not to say anything was going on that was wrong,
right?
Because we're never going to know, because we don't know.
Right.
But it gives the impression, it gives the air that something isn't right when you have the daughter, who's the judge, former judge, retired, who's now the mediator in this major lawsuit against MGMRI, and her father was not only an executive of MGMRI, but he was in charge of Mandalay Bay security while he was still there employed while the massacre was occurring. So it just gave a different hand out. To get back to something that I want to say, so, and I'm sure people know that, and so, well, some people still don't know. They still don't, they think records are going to be, they're going to come out. Once they agreed to mediation, all discovery stopped. In other words, videotapes, records, internal documents, police, anything they were going to get from MGMRI, once the mediation started, all that discovery process stopped. Once they agreed to the mediation, which means unless something happens with some of these minor lawsuits, we're never going to see all the documents, all the video, and there's still video and documents and paperwork and stuff that's never been released by MGMRI. That is never going to be made public. And I said this, Mike, early on, and I said this within the first couple of stories that I wrote right after the massacre, when I was finding out that a lot of stuff that went on in this case was wrong, either through incompetence, cover-up, whatever you want to call it. That I said early on in many of my stories that this case was never going to see the light of day in a civil courtroom. And I
Yep.
was getting flack on emails from all kinds of people, attorneys of people saying, you're crazy, you don't know what you're talking about. And I based that on the first 6-7 months of the stories that I was writing and the information I was getting. I said, there's no way MGMRI is going to allow their security people, Jesus Campos and all those guys, sitting in front of a civil jury and being grilled by the attorneys for the victims and the families. It wasn't going to happen. And it didn't happen. And I said that when I did my final story, as I've been saying this for 2 years, it was never going to see the light of the courtroom. And I just want to say something while you're on here, because I know you got
Sure.
your people are interested in this, is you got to remember that a lot of stuff happened the night of the massacre inside Mandalay Bay. Put into a nutshell, you had LVMPD, Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department officers, Cordell Hendricks, and Ella Dawson, his partner, who was just out of the academy. But to me, that makes no difference to most cops. She was a police officer. He was a police officer. They were there answering a call for 2 prostitutes that the security people, at Mandalay Bay had made. And in the process of him being there, the radio calls start going out about the shooting. And then Jesus Campos, once the firing started, called into security dispatch, because we all heard that in the recording that was released to the New York Times later on. When that happened, the exact time, that's still under debate, whether it was 5 minutes, 6 minutes, or whatever. But they knew immediately, Mandalay Bay security knew immediately, once the shot started, that Jesus Campos said the shots are coming from 32, 135. So there shouldn't have been anything, any type of anybody saying we didn't know, the police didn't know. You got to remember, when I did one of my stories, and I look back at the 9/11 records when they find up being released months later, was that it was like 15, and I'm just saying this off the top of my head because I don't have any of these stories in front of me, but it was like 10, 15 minutes later when we see through the communication records at the dispatch center Metro that security had called in a Metro, but they did it over 10 minutes after the firing had started. So that was one of the things that was a red flag to me, is why was that big delay? I mean, maybe they couldn't get into 9/11 because so many calls were coming into the center, but it didn't happen. Gets back to Jesus Campos now. Just hold that thought for a second. Okay?
Sure.
Jesus Campos gets a call to check an open door, room door on 32 on the 32nd floor. And he's on another floor. So he goes up through the stairwell to make entry into the 32nd floor hallway. And I wrote about this specifically so many times because this was the reason why I said, the big reason, they're never going to see the light of day in a courtroom and allow this guy to sit on a stand and get grilled by attorneys. He's now in the stairwell, and he has to make entry into the 32nd floor because that's where he's going to see the open door. He's going to check on it. So he gets to the inside stairwell door. He's still in the stairwell, and he can't open it. Okay, and what he does is what he doesn't do, okay? Those doors don't have a lock on it because it's a fire door. So he can't get in. So he knows there's something wrong. But what doesn't he do? He doesn't call in to security dispatch. And I was director of security at 2 different properties in the hotel casino business for almost 25 years here. And I'm telling you, those are serious, serious violations. It's not something that a security officer would, at least my guys wouldn't do it. And I worked for MGM many years ago as an investigator. And then I was director of security at 2 properties in the last 10 years over at the Riviera before it was demolished. What I'm getting to is that's a health and safety issue. Anything to do with fire safety, doors locked and closed that you can't get into, not supposed to be locked. So let's get back to that. He can't get into the stairwell. So what does he do? He doesn't do nothing. He doesn't call into dispatch and say, hey, I'm trying to get into the 32nd floor stairwell, but there's something wrong with the door because the door will not open. He doesn't say anything. He goes down the stairs, the next floor, up, down, goes to the elevator, and now he's up on the 32nd floor, whatever time it took him to do that. He checks on the door that was open, and he closes it. He's now walking towards Paddock's room, which was 32-135, the room with the double doors that we all saw in the photograph. 134 is the door adjacent to that. But right adjacent to 135, Paddock's room, is the fire stairwell door that goes to the stairwell. Okay? So he walks in front of Paddock's room, and for some reason, Paddock didn't see him because he probably would have opened fire on him. Now he's in the stairwell, he's in that little vestibule, and there's a house phone in there. So now he calls up on the house phone. He sees the bracket, because that's what he tells Metro Detective during the interview later on. He sees the bracket drilled into the door and into the jamb. That was what's causing the door not to open. He sees that. I mean, this guy's absolutely stupid. He's a security officer. So he calls dispatch, and he says, listen, and he tells them what's going on. I see the bracket, I see this, and the stowell. They say, hang up and call maintenance, which blew my mind when they did that. So he calls back maintenance from the house phone and gets the cell phone. Well, first he talks to the maintenance dispatcher. She connects him with the cell phone to the maintenance supervisor. And he's telling him what's going on. Now, the guy's saying, what do you see? He says he's the bracket in there. That's what he told the police. Now, while he's in the stairwell, he hears drilling noises coming from 32-135. He described them as drilling noises, okay? Here's what I had an issue with, because I'm telling you, 20-something years in the casino business, director at 2 different properties, this guy is the dumbest security officer I ever seen in my life, or he was more interested in getting off because he was pretty close to the end of his shift. So let's say I think
you're correct on the first one there, as evidenced by the Ellen show as well. So yeah, I'm with you on that.
He's in the stairwell. He sees the bracketed, screwed in, drilled into the jamb in the door. He hears drilling noises coming from 135. What does he do? He hangs up the phone and he does absolutely nothing. He starts walking down the hall. When he's halfway down the hall, I guess Paddock must have saw the movement on the camera, and that's when he fires a couple of shots and he gets hit with the fragment of the bullet, whatever he had. But my point being is this. When he's being interviewed by the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department detective, I don't have the guy's name, he tells that to the detective. And what pissed me off, Mike, was the detective didn't ask him, wait a minute. Oh, the detective says, so you heard the drilling noises? Yes. And he says, was it deep inside the room or was it close to the door? He tells the detective, deep inside the room. Okay. He just sees this bracket drilled into with screws into the door and the jamb. Now he's hearing drilling noises from the room adjacent to the fire stairwell, and he doesn't do anything. He walks away without calling it in. The first thing he should have done was called it in immediately when he was in the stairwell in the first place. And that would have caused security and maintenance people to already be en route. But he didn't do that. But now,
do you feel that all of this was wrapped up into him obviously missing a lot of protocols, which is probably the reason, part of the reason why they, squelched him and kept him quiet and what have you. But at the same time, several requests were made to Togliatti about their procedures and their emergency response team and all of these different things. And I don't think either one of us got an answer. I don't think anyone got an answer from those queries.
Well, no, but let's get back to this for a second, because this is important.
Sure. Yeah,
when the detective is talking to him, what pissed me off was, and I said that in my stories, is why didn't the detective ask him, wait a minute, Officer Campos, you saw the bracket drilled into the jaw and the jamb. You heard the drilling noises coming from deep inside the room. Why did you just walk away without doing anything? You didn't call into your dispatch. You completely ignored it. I'm telling you, Mike, and to the people listening, that wouldn't happen. It certainly wouldn't happen in my security department and in any security department that I know on the strip that's worth their salt. That is a major violation. Remember, it's Sunday night. It's 10 o'clock. He sees the bracket. He knows that's why the door wasn't open from the other side. Who put the bracket in there? Obviously, that's suspicious. He doesn't call it in on the other side. He doesn't call it in. Was he in the vestibule? He hears the drilling noises. What he should have done, this what my guys would have done. They would have been on the radio and said, listen, I need some backup up here. I see the bracket drilled into the door, and I'm hearing drilling noises, strange noises coming from the room. Control, call the room, see if you get a response. That's the first thing you would do as security officer. Dispatch, at least my guys, what my operation was running. Dispatch would call the room, and they get an answer. This is security. Can you come to the door, sir? Because we need to come in. Security needs to talk to you. They get no answer. They get back to the security officer, say, we called, we're not getting an answer. Obviously, maybe he can hear the phone from the door ringing. At that point, remember this. He has the master keys because he's a hotel officer. He's on patrol in a hotel. He has the master keys. He is allowed under Nevada revised statute in keeper law, and we've done this all the time when I was in the business, is you knock on the door 3 times. You say, security, security, security. I'm making entry into the room, because you want to make sure somebody in the room, they know you're coming in. You put the key in the door, open up the door, because you're going to do a welfare check for the simple reason is you got a lot of suspicious stuff going on. You got the bracket drilled in the door adjacent to the room, 32 and 35. You're hearing strange noises in there. You're going to make entry into the room. We don't know. That's what should have happened. Okay. But this guy didn't do any of that. He didn't even call it in. He walked away like, I'm going to ignore it. And let's get back to the detective. The detective should have said, wait a minute, Officer Campos. What you saw that? You saw the bracket, you heard the drilling noises, and you just walked away? What is your procedure? Why do it? And I believe the reason why the detective didn't pursue that is because when they were doing these interviews, I believe they were told, don't do anything that's going to get MGM, RI, the owners of the Mandalay Bay, in any type of legal problem. Because any detective, any investigator, and I was a criminal investigator for years, that's the first thing I would ask him. This is, this is the worst mass shooting in American history. The guy's like a material witness to the shooting because he's the first one there when he hears the shooting and he calls it in. Wait a minute, Officer Campos, why did you just walk away? You didn't call it in? No. You didn't knock on the door to do a check? No. Why? The detective never asked him that.
Exactly. Reading these reports, it was like, I know you probably felt the same way. Reading the reports, it was like watching the worst scripted, TV crime show ever. And you're listening to the people ask questions. You're like, ask them the right damn question. It's like, God, let me get in there and ask them.
And this also, because I don't have anything in front of me. I'm coming from the top of my head from everything I wrote. Okay. No, we saw the detective's interview with Campos, and I published in one of my stories the voluntary statement that he gave when he was down at the hospital right after it happened, before he gave the interview a couple of days later. But I'm telling you, he was interviewed a second time. That's what I heard from my police sources. And
that's correct. And
we've never seen that police report. Okay.
The other thing we haven't seen is the videos of some of these, where any of the interviews that detectives were doing. My understanding is that a large portion of them were video, but no one has ever seen any of those.
Well, I don't know where they did the interview with Campos was done, and I believe it was done in the hotel, I think in one of the rooms up there, because they wanted it close to, but I don't think it was down in one of the detention rooms or the interview rooms at the Mandalay Bay, which would have been audio and video recorded per gaming regulations. When you're doing an interview, it has to be recorded per gaming. But
both Campos and Shuck, and I think a couple others were brought back in for second, possibly even third.
I mean, I'm telling you this. I'm telling this as a former investigator. Okay, if he was not brought in for a second interview, then they're more incompetent that I wrote about in all the stories. Because once they read that statement and then they got all the facts, they would have brought him in and said, "Wait a minute, why didn't you? Why did you just ignore everything?" That's the biggest thing with me. I mean, this guy is either the dumbest security officer in the history, and I put it out in one of my stories, of Las Vegas, or there's something else going on, and we're never going to know because he's never going to be sitting in front of a civil jury. And one more thing before I forget, so people understand, is that, remember, I broke the story on Hendricks, and even before that, when I was reading the reports, because this is important. Hendricks and Vossen, his partner, and 3 armed Mandalay Bay security supervisors, assistant supervisors. We all know through the video now, we're on the 31st floor for 4 or 5 minutes and didn't do a damn thing. They retreated. Okay. A lot of people forgot if they didn't read my stories. On the 32nd floor, while the shooting was occurring, was an armed Mandalay Bay, the security operations manager, and at least 2, possibly 3 armed bike patrol officers for the same amount of time, if not longer, while Paddock was firing, and they also didn't take any action. Now, that was something, you know, if this would ever went to a civil jury, people would ask, what was he trained? What do you do? Were you trained to do anything on an active shooter? That they didn't want any of this stuff coming up because they would have to have training records, see how they were trained. It didn't do it. But remember, I wrote one of my stories, and this has never been explained. Nothing was explained by MGM Ride, never will be. But the security operations manager, when he first talked to the police, he said that he was on the 32nd floor with Hendricks. Right. And he said that 10 times. I'm telling you.
You would think he would know, right?
Hendricks was on this wall, I was on this wall, and then he says when it stopped, he says, because the detective asked him, they wanted to make sure nobody came out of that room. Did you see? No, he says, me and Hendricks had the room covered.
Right.
You all know that he lied. And I said the story because he was on the 32nd floor, but Hendricks was not on the 32nd floor.
Exactly.
He never went on the 32nd floor. He's on the 31st floor. That's something that we're never going to hear about. I mean, this guy.
Exactly. And when the body worn camera footage came out, and it basically verified a lot of our suspicions that we had to begin with, because some of the stories weren't adding up and they couldn't be in 2 places at the same time and all these different things. And I remember when I was in the hotel, and myself and a couple other guys, we were walking the hallway to see how long it would take to get from point A to point B, and all these different scenarios playing out. And we're listening to the audio and listening to the calls and listening to everything as possible that we possibly could get our hands on. And then I realized Campos did not come up the elevator they originally told us that he did. And then I ended up finding, I think you remember that, I ended up finding that elevator, and that explained because he came up in the 300 wing. He didn't come up in the 200 or in the regular guest elevator. So that explained that, but nothing else was ever figured out. It was just ridiculous.
This is what people got to understand. Okay. The security procedures that night, and I don't know what Mandalay Bay security. I can tell you what the industry standard would be. Is I already explained that, but people got to understand something. Had Campos, when he was in that stairwell before the shooting started, and couldn't get in that door, had he got on the radio, which he should have done, and said, "Control," or whatever they call it, dispatch, I can't get in the door. I'm on the other side. Can you have a unit or maintenance come up? If I was gone, I'm going to go down and back up and find out what's going on. People would have already been en route. And maybe that motion up there, maybe that would have changed the circumstances that night. Maybe made it worse, maybe made it better, but something would have happened. And when he's in the vestibule on a house phone, and then he hears these drilling noises, had he investigated or knocked on the door, maybe the series of events that night would have changed. Maybe Metro would have been there sooner. But as we all know, it didn't happen.
It didn't happen. So many lives are lost because of the pure negligence of a few individuals, and the freezing of a training officer. Wouldn't, if a regular officer or if the other officer, the trainee, had frozen, it would make a whole lot more sense than Hendricks and what have you. So I have very little, not necessarily respect for the guy, but this situation of bringing him back is a whole nother scenario. But Eddie's in here, and he wants to ask you a question real quick as well. Eddie, are you still with us? Eddie, you in there? I thought he was.
I can't see your chat on the where I'm on now. I can't see if people are asking.
I get it. Let me make sure he's in there. You're up. I'm sending him a text. But anyway, back. Let's backtrack a little bit. And actually, you and I could probably do a whole separate show. We could go all night with all the just because you and I have only shared a few stories back and forth, and it was amazing when I was there the last time, and some of the stuff that we were talking about, it was just really refreshing to have someone else with the same, scenario played out, but from your angle and your perspective, and I'm in a different angle, different perspective, and we end up with the same forethought and the thought of how this should have played out, but it didn't. You coming with your background, which is way more experience than I have, and especially in this area, and I appreciated that.
One thing, before I forget, you were talking about the Mandalay Bay's emergency response team. Okay,
right.
I wrote in the story in 2018. I had spoken to a gentleman who runs a security. He's a former government guy, a lot of experience. And anyway, he had a conversation with the woman who was in charge of firearms safety and training for Mandalay Bay, because he had a program, an active shooter program, that he was trying to pitch to different casinos. And what she told, and I published this in a story, and this guy's name was James Cameron. And I could say that because I talked to him and I published his name in the story, allowed me to do that. And I published the exchanges and the emails going back between him and this woman who was in charge of training for Mandalay Bay. And he says, I have this program, in a nutshell. She says, oh, we don't need this because we have our own emergency response team, and it was in place prior to October 1st. Okay? So you got to remember that. And I wrote a story about that, and I think it was titled, Where Was Mandalay Bay's Emergency Response Team the Night of the Massacre? Because if it was in the hotel and they had, and this is another thing. Okay?
Well, the female head of security, I can't remember her name, is Wendy or something, but she had tweeted about or bragged about that back in September. We're talking September, just before the shooting. She
bragged it to James Cameron, and then he told me about it. He gave me the verification and the stuff in the emails and the texts, and that's what I published. But that's another thing, that they are not going to allow this to go into a courtroom, because a jury, I'm telling you, this 800 million or whatever it was on the final was way, way, way too low. Way too low on the final.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Absolutely going there.
Easy on it.
Once they got that dollar amount that was around the dollar amount they knew the insurance was going to take care of, that's when the talks stalled. And a lot of people don't know this, but that dollar, you and I know it, that dollar amount was almost agreed to months before they announced the final settlement. And I have a whole issue with how they announced that settlement and the date that they did it, and various other issues with Egglet and what have you. But Eddie, can you hear me now? Are you in here? Is this right? The right Eddie? Trying to see if he's he keeps texting me to let him in, but I can see him, and I see two Eddies now. So we're probably going to have a troll in here or not. But Eddie, if you can hear me, let me unmute you. Okay, you keep muting it back. There you go. Talk. Eddie. Hello. Okay, you're going to give him 5 seconds. Yeah.
Mike, can you hear me real quick? This is true. Yeah, Roger Allen.
Yeah, I hear you, Roger.
Hey, I didn't mean to cut off. I know you're trying to fix things with Eddie, and Doug's done a great job for some stuff. I got a couple quick things. I did speak to ARM. I called them on their protocols once I found out Jennifer Tagliati was working for them. And according to their regulations, it was a breach as well, as far as I know. But going back to the two bike patrol officers that were on the 32nd floor with the security operations manager, I think it's Scottell or what, Anthony Scottell or something like that. So there's a police report. The name is mentioned with the bike patrol officer, but I was trained as an interrogator, like formal schooling in the military, and even the basic, even the most basic interrogatives were not asked, as Doug Papa said, but there are reports missing. So here's the problem I have. They knew this was never going to go to trial, that they were going to settle. Well, that screwed anybody that had the proof, meaning me, that had the proof that wanted to go all the way, because I was going to unravel this crap and expose them for what they were doing.
Right.
But that's why I didn't settle, because these guys already had it in the bag for MGM. They were going to do whatever to settle it, no matter what, and that automatically put me at a disadvantage. That I would never get my day in court, and everybody in this country should have a right to day in court, especially to stand up for something like this. But here's the kicker: they don't want me to get to court because they don't want me to talk. They don't want to have to answer for any of this. But that automatically, basically screwed me or anybody from getting the truth, unless this was exposed. And that's why I've gone so public with this stuff, because the truth needs to be told at the end of the day. But
that's why I'm still working too. Doug's still working. You know, we're all the tried and true guys are still cooking.
To try and expose this, because you know they didn't want this settled. You know, they wanted this settled. They didn't want this to go to court, because it exposes the crap of what Paddock was actually trying to do, because he was tired of all of the crap. You know, they're throwing stones in a glass house. You know, and you know, whether he felt they cheated him or revenge for his father, all those might have been factors. But at the end of the day, they covered this up. They didn't even ask basic interrogatives. They didn't want this information to come out, and they screwed everybody. You know, and it's not right. The lawyers, for some reason, went along to go along with this deal. The top lawyers need to answer for some of this. And like I said, I'd like to know what made Robert Eglett so giddy when announcing that, you know, 59 people had died, or now 59 plus people that have committed, you know, we've had additional people that committed suicide that we'll never hear about. But we just had the last lady, who I think, Kim Garvanis, I think is one of the ladies that I ended up trying to help. But at the end of the day, the families aren't getting any answers. We're not getting any change in security. We didn't get no damn apology. We got the bottom of the barrel of the money. So what the hell did we get? What made him so giddy? Because I haven't seen anything. None of this is a laughing matter. People need to be held accountable. And I can tell you,
a lot of money
people were
hands and
pretty much almost forced into settlement. Yep. There was never going to be a trial, because they offered the big money to the families, which rightfully so. And then they screwed everybody else below, because
Mike,
they knew that they wouldn't have a case to stand on at that point. And they covered up the information.
Let me get Eddie real quick, because we've been trying to
go along, and that's the problem. That's what needs to change.
Roger, hang on just a second. Let me try to get Eddie in here real quick, because he's.
I'm sorry, I don't know if you can hear me, but you're muted.
I hear you. I can hear you. Eddie, go ahead.
All right. Hi, Mike. Roger, I respect your what you're going through, but the people who were shot and wounded deeply are being compensated. I mean, it's a horrible thing, and I get where you're coming from. The number can't be large enough. But my comment was to Doug. Doug, myself, Las Vegas Shooting Archive, who
well, he dropped out, I think.
Yeah, he's got the worst luck with these things. He's got Bluetooth earpieces that he uses, and that might be affecting him.
I wanted to hear his question. So he'll
absolutely
say something before I forget.
Sure.
Much to talk about. I want people to understand something. Another reason why, and I put this in the stories, is just another thing that happened before October 1st, 2017. That, and I wrote about this in the story. A lot of people maybe didn't read the stories, they don't know. And I kept saying in all my stories when I was getting all this information that MGM was responsible in the sense that this was foreseeable and it was predictable, and they didn't put the proper security plans in place, which they should have done to stop Paddock from bringing those weapons in and the explosives. But there's one thing that happened. Now, if people are not in Las Vegas, in 2011, the old Sahara Hotel closed down. And while it was being renovated and it was going to open up under the SLS resort, and now it went back to the Sahara name. But 2011, the Sahara Hotel closes. Before they started renovations, that hotel was used as a training exercise, and people got to listen to this, by the FBI and the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. And what happened was they were doing a training scenario. There were SWAT members there, and there were also members from the Las Vegas Security Chiefs Association, security professionals that were present. They wanted to do a scenario on how to take out a sniper in a hotel high-rise. How would that happen? And what they did was they took a mannequin and they put it in one of the hotel high-rise windows of the old Sahara Hotel. The hotel was now closed at that time. And an FBI counter sniper hovering over the Las Vegas Strip in an FBI helicopter. These guys were from Quantico, the hostage rescue team. With one shot, hovering over the Strip, takes the shot and hits the mannequin. Okay? That training scenario was done in case, how do we take out a sniper from an elevated position in a hotel high-rise should it happen? The point being to this is both the FBI, the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, and the Las Vegas Security Chiefs Association, and also present in there, because I spoke to cops who were there during this thing, at the time was the director of corporate security for MGM. It was MGM Resorts at the time, not before it was MGMRI. But it doesn't make a difference because it's the same guy that was still there in October 1st, 2017. He was in charge of corporate security. So all these people who witnessed this training scenario, so they knew that a threat from a sniper attack from a hotel high-rise from an elevated position could happen. And they still took no precautions when they had that Route 91 concert that was surrounded by hotel high-rise towers. Now, that training exercise happened after 2011 and before, I think, around 2012 when the hotel was closed. But then 2 years later, in 2014, get a load of this, in the Mandalay Bay Hotel in one of the towers, a maid goes into one of the rooms, and she sees a bunch of weapons in there, and one of the weapons was pointed towards the window that faced the Strip. She calls security, the police get involved, the FBI get involved, and what happened was there was a convicted felon, I think his name was Ty Aaron Dunbar from the top of my head. He was in the room with his girlfriend, he had bolt action 308, bunch of rifles, a homemade suppressor, ammunition. Anyway, they conducted that investigation as a possible terrorist attack, and they found out it wasn't. He was just an idiot and a convicted felon that shouldn't have the guns. But point being is this. You have the training exercise, how to take out a sniper from an elevated position 2 years before that. 2014, in the Mandalay Bay, in one of the towers, the same hotel where Paddock fired from, they find this cache of weapons up in the room, and then they still don't take any measures to prevent an almost identical attack that happened on October 1st, 2017. Again, there's no way in the world they were ever going to let this case go in front of a civil jury. I see Mike's back up. I want to hear his question.
Yes, I am. Eddie, what I did, let me say something real quick. When you guys come in, turn off your cameras immediately, because that kills the bandwidth. Something's going on with YouTube, I guess, with the bandwidth, and then can't kill your mics until you're actually ready to talk, because we can hear the background noises and stuff too. But Eddie, go ahead and ask your question, because Doug did want to get that from you here.
All right. Yeah, I'm glad to. Doug, hi, my name is Eddie Schmitz. I live here in Vegas. I've been here all my life. Las Vegas Shooting Archive, myself, and several other researchers put together a lot of information to the attorneys, but we also tried to the attorneys of record for survivors and victims' families. But we tried, I tried, knocked on doors, made phone calls. I've been to every single attorney, well, both the attorneys' firms that represent the media who paid to have this information delivered. They don't want the rest of the information that's missing. We have pages upon pages upon pages of information that is clearly missing, and links to why it's missing. It's a very well done sheet. Do you have any explanation as to what my next course of action is? Because they don't want it. I
don't know, Eddie. I will say this, is that, the the statute of limitations is closed on the lawsuits. Okay, the majority of the victims, not all of them, there's still a few holdouts like Roger. They're going back and forth, but basically, this case is done. I mean, that's basically what it's going to be. They're not interested in anything anymore. They're not interested in anything. I mean, come on. I mean, this guy Hendricks that was fired, he's put back to work a couple of months ago.
I know.
If people don't care, they don't care anymore. The survivors care. I care. People like you care. But
there's officers here in this valley that care too. They say they wouldn't walk within 5 feet of him on a shift. If he comes out from behind a desk ever again, that would be the day they walk away.
No, I understand. I heard the same thing. I mean, this guy, there's a bunch of questions I have on that too. I mean, was this guy, was he given a psychological again? Is this guy psychologically get into a firefight or a situation where he's going to freeze again and possibly get a civilian or an officer shot? But what I'm saying is all this has died in the Las Vegas media. Yes, and what I found out that was so just unbelievable to me, and not only for me, to people who were reading my stories, is they kept telling me, Doug, I broke one story after another. I broke the story about the firing, the officer in the room, firing the weapon. Homicide was not allowed to investigate Paddock's death. They destroyed the crime scene. They released photographs to the newspapers. And it was one thing after another. But you know what? None of this. I did almost 150 stories in this, which was published by the Baltimore Post-Examiner. None of this was ever made it to the local media. And you know something? Every Las Vegas media outlet, print, Sun, the LVRJ, all the television stations, they were getting the links to every story that I wrote. I was sending the links to them. Yep. I got not one phone call ever.
Isn't that amazing?
Not one.
Yep.
Not one phone call from any reporter says, wow, how did you find this out? Maybe you want to follow up on it. This is interesting. They did
exactly
nothing, but all they did was praise and cover for Lombardo's lies. Sheriff Joe Lombardo, who runs the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. He lied to the media so many times. Every time he did, I wrote a story on it. It was disgraceful. And I'm not just saying this because I'm saying it. I could prove the emails that I got from people said, how is the local media allowing him to get away from that? Why aren't they going after MGM? Why aren't they asking these hard questions? It was unbelievable. Before I forget, one other thing. One of the last things that happened, excuse me, I got allergies and it's killing my voice. One of the last things that happened is Fox Nation on Fox, which surprised the hell out of me with Fox, because I was on Fox. I was on Tucker Carlson a couple of times with Catherine Lombardo, rest her soul. But one of the last things they did is they did a documentary last year, and it was like this big, supposed to be an expose on what happened with the massacre. And the undersheriff, I wrote a story and I blew him out of the water. None of the media would touch the story. He's on the Fox documentary, and his name is Kevin McMahill, who's still the undersheriff under Joe Lombardo, the number 2. And you can get this if you go on the Fox Nation website and you could watch this documentary. He said on that documentary that the shooting stopped when they breached the stairwell door, this ad hoc SWAT team, Levi Hancock and his people, and that's when the firing stopped. That was a freaking lie. The firing stopped almost an hour and a half at 10:12 when the firing stopped. Those guys didn't breach that door to 11:20. When they breached the stairwell door, it was about 10 minutes before they actually breached the 32-135. And he said on that show that, that's what the firing is, when they breached the door from the stairwell to get in there. And I was amazed that Fox did not vet what he said. And I sent them emails and I didn't hear nothing back. And right before that, if your listeners remember, ABC did their big Nightline expose thing October 1st. And I blew them out of the water because they showed Hendricks running through the casino. This was supposed to, I had family people and the survivors and family members. of the people who were killed, and they were all happy. And I thought ABC was going to do this, and they, for a week or two, it was on the news, a big expose, terror.
Yep. And they blew it.
They blew it. They did not mention at all Hendricks and the security people not taking action. They interviewed Campos,
right,
but they didn't ask them the hard question is, why did you just, they didn't even, they nothing. Absolutely nothing.
And not only that, they did not. Remember, I told you about they showed the wrong elevator originally that he went up, and then the whole scene was recreated, but they never said it was recreated. So everyone thought that was the actual scene, and it wasn't. How does
the national network on the worst mass shooting to this day in American history? 58 people were killed. One died later on. 59. The largest homicide investigation in the history of the LVMPD, and ABC does a whitewash of a report. The emails that I got from people when I wrote that story, they said, this is unbelievable. It's bad enough the local media didn't do a damn thing, but for ABC News to come out and not say anything about Hendricks and those people standing around, didn't ask, they had Campos. You saw Campos was being interviewed by them. They asked them stupid questions. They didn't ask the questions you asked them. Well, you heard it. Why did you? And that's what everybody thought they were going to do. And it turned out to be completely opposite. That is national.
The whole thing was basically scripted at that point as to anything after the fact. And it was just amazing because I sent a 3-page letter. I copied Catherine on it when I sent it, and a 3-page letter to ABC saying that they probably did way more damage than they did good. Because basically they fabricated essentially the entire thing. They kept a couple pieces in chronological order, but the actual timing, him running across the floor, the Campos going up elevator, which is behind the restaurant, which serves the floors from the 300 wing. And that was something that was never brought out either, was that Campos came up the 300 wing, not the 200 wing, and not the center court. It was just so many inaccuracies that after a while you start wondering, how is it that the researchers like yourself, me, and others are able to pull together better facts than the FBI, LVMPD, or any of these mainstream media organizations that are trying to do this. It's just unbelievable.
It's Mike, can I jump in here for 1 second?
Yes.
Absolutely. Sure.
Las Vegas Shooting Archive, who we're all familiar with. Without him and Wego, we wouldn't have the information we have. He has asked me, there's a website that he has that he's built with so much public information, it's just ungodly. But it really hasn't been put into public yet. And that website is Las Vegas. Hold on, let me make sure I have this correct. Vegas Shooting.
And Doug, if you haven't seen this yet, it's going to show you a lot of the missing information that point blank that we still don't have. That watching the Supreme Court proceedings and all that, it's like RJ just gave up at the end. They just said, you know what, we're done. The Uber video comes out, and that's proof that they had more video. And as well as I do, there's a ton more. Eddie, go ahead. I mean to jump in there on you.
Doug.
Yes.
Write this down. VegasShootingEvidence.com. Everything and anything you need to know about what's missing is there. Help me help these people and help the rest of America find out what happened at Route 91, because it's BS. Until we know the rest of the story, how do we know this is what happened? Well, there is so much missing nonsense. It doesn't even make sense.
We're not going to get a lot of the things that everybody thinks we're going to get. As far as any more videos and everything coming from MGMRI and their internal reports and their security and everything like that, that is not going to happen. That's done. And one of the things that I wrote about in one of the last stories that bugs the hell out of me to this day is when they. And I was talking about the final Metro's final report, the FIT report on the massacre. They did one in January, and then they did the final one in August. And I covered this in many stories. There were multiple things in those that were false, contradictory. And as one example, right off the top of my head, is you got to remember, this is the worst mass shooting in modern American history, the largest homicide investigation in the history of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. And they put in, this is just one of many things, I cover this in my stories, but I'll just put this one. They said in one of these, one of those pages, because I read everything and I was cross-checking everything. And they said one night Paddock was in the casino from 6 a.m. to 6, from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. continuously. That's what they said. And then I knew something wasn't wrong. I was checking the lock interrogation reports. And at the time they said on that day that he was for 12 hours continuously playing the casino, about 1:30 from the top of my head, 2 o'clock in the morning, for like an hour and a half, somebody was accessing his room with his key multiple times. And I'm thinking, how do you miss that in the final report of the worst mass shooting in American history? Nobody vetted that stuff. And another thing was where they said on this one instance, Paddock unloaded the stuff from his car, so many bags, and brought him up to the room. And then a couple of pages more into the FIT report, they're talking about the same instance, and they say, on this day, the bellman brought the bags up to the room on a cart, and then Paddock opened the door, helped him bring them in, and I ripped him apart on that. I mean, those are just two things off the top of my head.
Doug, you want me to blow your mind? You know who you know who he is. God bless him.
Oh,
a good man. He and I worked a lot together.
He might on by his running
report, but he and I worked a lot together on this interrogation report, and he and I gave a lot of information to these attorneys on that. And one or at two different points in time, there was a separate person from outside the room while someone was inside the room trying to access that lock. It's utter nonsense. Also, I took footsteps from each of the body cam elevator footages from him coming in and out of the hotel, whether it be valet, whether it be the back door where he was going out to his car, wherever he was. The time frames make 0 sense on 5 of the videos. They don't add up.
Is there any way I can chime in for a minute?
Sure,
Roger. Can you hear me? All right, so I can fill in some information, and you guys got to just kind of bear with me because I know it sounds a little crazy. This is why I said my video was so important. Obviously, it exposes a 16-minute time difference in what they say is the first shots, because Campos was actually coming down the elevator when he shot out the window. But check this out. If he shot at the tanks, what makes you think he wasn't trying to shoot down a helicopter? Because in my video, a helicopter's coming into view. Took a couple shots that didn't go down and ended up landing behind him at Mandalay Bay. But had that helicopter gone down, it would have exploded, potentially gone down on the main, I believe it's the west side of the strip, blocking the main entrance there, entrance exit. And then he turns and shoots to the tanks. What would that have done? It would have funneled the crowd, right? Had both of them happen. The helicopter didn't go down. He was waiting for another one to come back around when Campos showed up. But there was a pause. This guy still had almost, 5,000 rounds of ammo? He didn't even shoot half the guns. He could have shot a hell of a lot longer. He stopped, and I can explain why. I mean, just think about it. He's an accountant. In the movie that came out the same month that he started buying guns was The Accountant. It's about taking down the mob and the FBI and kind of embarrassing them while helping them at the same time. He was pissed off about the FBI arresting his father. The last time he saw him was about 7 years old. The main father-like figure in the movie is identical to Paddock's father, as he would remember him at that age. Not only that, where did he get the idea? In the movie, he even copied the timeline. There's a 20-minute timeline. He just broke it up into 2 10-minute segments. But in the movie, he turns around, and there's an FBI agent once they get to the guy's house. He's got a machine gun looking out the damn window. That's where he got the idea of looking out the damn window. I mean, like I said, I know it seems far-fetched. He was another copycat. Most of these guys are copycats. It was about mental health. It was about them cheating him. It was about his father. It was about all these things. I wrote the FBI profile back November 12th, 2017 and sent it to him. I will tell you, it was a 12-page paper, and some of it, man, I was stressed. I was under a lot of pressure, but I got the key information out to them. That's why they stopped investigating, because it embarrassed them. He made them go all around the world chasing where he went when he never planned on going anywhere. He wasn't driving to Chicago with all those weapons and ammo. He wasn't flying there, and he sure as hell was too lazy to drive there. So he was staying in Vegas, but he made them go all around the world chasing him to embarrass them, make them spend money and resources and waste their money.
And I can confirm part of that, because in my conversations with Eric and getting into the mind of the brother and all this other stuff, because obviously the talks were extensive, that there was some of that playing games with the cops and stuff like that. As far as the tanks and things like that, the 8 shots fired towards the tanks, we know where all 8 shots went, including the 2 last shots that we figured that out, plus the suicide shot. So we got all that, but mixed in, the shots fired from 134 as opposed to 135, obviously 2 different calibers, and the time difference going back between the 2. One wouldn't be firing at a helicopter, but the other one he might have. So there's probably a lot of this mixed in together. There's some truth to all of it. And we can, separate these shows out and just come back and revisit certain subjects, because I know me and Doug could go all night long going back and forth on some of these subjects. And Roger, you too, and Eddie, me and Eddie have talked extensively. So, but one thing, that's important is, going back to the whole focus of this particular thing, Doug, I'm not sure if I ever got a full. I know you didn't agree with them just assessing or just bypassing the conflict of interest, and like it didn't happen. But let me give you another piece of information. And can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure.
When you get a chance, let me get one last comment in when you get a chance.
Okay, no problem. And you and I, we can do another show too. But the information as far as the attorneys, when the attorneys got the information that Togliatti was related to Togliatti, obviously George was related to Jennifer, they took that information, and instead of disclosing that in such a way that would get to the claimants and the people part of the settlement, and even some of the attorneys outside of Las Vegas, that became some muddied water. There's only one attorney that appears to have possibly given that information to his claimants, but I can't confirm that any other claimants received that, and no other attorney that I'm aware of made that information available to the claimants. Now, whether or not that is important, or whether or not it it's not their decision. There's a law that covers that, and it does say exactly what the proper procedure is to do when information like that comes out. But I can tell you this: every single survivor I've talked to who has heard this, who never heard it before, are dumbfounded. They're floored by this information, and they're wondering, why was this not disclosed to them? Now, obviously, they're not going to run back and
it should have been
shut down the settlement. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that, Doug?
It should have been disclosed to them. And I'm saying, when I wrote the story, and I had talked to Roger and I talked to other people, and I had to get it verified, because everything I write is vetted.
Right.
You just can't take somebody's word. And when I found out about it, I'm telling you, I don't care what anybody says. If I was an attorney representing the victims, I don't care what attorney, and I find out that some attorneys, the big ones who handled the majority of the cases, agree that the mediator for this, one of the mediators, is going to be the daughter of the guy who was in charge of the Mandalay Bay security the night of the Las Vegas massacre, and is also a retired FBI agent, because the FBI was in the middle of this investigation with Metro. I would have said, are you freaking crazy? There's not another mediator in the United States of America that we can't get to mediate this case. I mean, I'm not saying anything was underhanded, but it sure gives the impression that something stinks, because I'm telling you, and I talked to attorneys and other people, and they said, Doug, you're absolutely right. I would have said, are you freaking crazy? The daughter of the guy who was running security for MGMRI, the massacre, and a retired FBI agent, is going to be the mediator against the lawsuit for MGMRI? I mean, give me break.
Exactly. I'm so glad you're the exact same thought. I mean, I was floored by it. I know when I talked to Eddie, he came on. I knew he was floored. But there's two emotional paths that this takes after this point, because obviously they're not going to derail the settlement. Settlement's done. There's nothing about what we're talking about tonight in regards to whether or not the judge should have recused herself, at the beginning or what have you, that will change what's happening as far as the settlement. But there may be something somewhere that may help someone some way. But my thought was to get this information out there so that that everyone gets the truth. No one's holding anything back, and they can make the decision as to how they want to proceed and go forward. And again, the disclaimer I said at the beginning of this entire show: we're not giving legal advice here. We're basically giving you information that you may not have had before, that we feel is extremely important, that I know I would want to know that this had happened. And I would be scratching my head trying to figure out, okay, wait a second. You're telling me that in a normal situation, a person who just worked for the other organization would probably have a good reason to recuse themselves. But we're talking about somebody who is related to the vice president, not just a regular vice president. He's the head of freaking security. And now not only is he the head of security, he's gone and he's upstate with Sisolak, and he's the director of public safety for the entire state, a job he once held before. And he was previously a FBI agent, which is also another whole scenario where there's probably a possible conflict of interest. It boggles the mind.
I spoke with an attorney, Mike. This is Eddie. I spoke with an attorney, as you know, Mike, after you and I hung up, because I was kind of outraged.
Yeah.
And the attorney I spoke with, she was at Route 91, and so was her husband. And she was taken aback by it as well. She did say that ARM is one of the larger mediation companies in town, and they're very well respected. Their firms used them many times.
Yep.
She's actually worked with Jennifer. She's not a judge anymore, obviously. And it's a little bit different, she said. But yet still it's messed up. It's messed up. That should have been disclosed. But before when Doug gets off, I know Doug's time's limited. He's back east and it's late as heck.
Doug's in Vegas.
I'm in Vegas.
Oh, okay. Very good.
Yeah. I just saw him a couple months ago.
Good deal. Let me ask you this. Doug.
Go ahead, Eddie. I want to say something, because a lot of people thought, because I was right, the stories were being published by the Baltimore Post-Examiner, that I was back east in Baltimore and New York, and I happened to write the stories, which I was writing stories for them before the massacre happened, from Las Vegas base. And everybody said, well, how do you get all this inside information when you're 3,000 miles away? And I said, I'm out here in Las Vegas. I'm not 3,000 miles away. So that's just people know.
Then you and I need to sit down and have a cup of coffee, my friend. We really do.
We could do
because
that.
My next question for you is, what are your thoughts on what happened an hour afterwards up and down the strip?
Well, I don't want to get back to take a whole bunch, but I want to say one thing, okay? I spoke to, I had a lot of MGM, I'm going to say a lot, but I had quite a few current and former MGMI employees who spoke to me, and that was the basis for some of the stories that I did. And I will say this. I spoke to somebody and I vetted the person, and he told me this. And now, if you remember, it was an hour almost after Paddock stopped firing when all those other calls were going out. Now, there's some reasons for those calls. People see everybody was running into different casinos, somebody's bleeding, somebody says somebody got shot, and they think they're shooting. But I tell you what, when this person told me he was working inside the New York, and this is what happened. There were gunshots that were fired because there was a stampede inside New York casino. This was an hour after Paddock had stopped firing. And that was the radio communication that I put in my story when Metro was responding to the New York for a possible shooter and this, and they got there, they couldn't find anybody. But he goes, this is what this person told me. He said, we heard it and we saw it, because there's videotape of the stampede that started when the shots were fired, and it's never been released by MGMRI. That's just one thing of many things that that bother me about that. Now, I wasn't there.
I'm going to have to agree with you, because I know you don't probably watch my piddly little channel. All my stuff's private now anyway, but I still have everything. I interviewed a gal who worked at Nine Fine Irishmen. I haven't disclosed that location until just now, and she said the exact same.
Is there any way I can chime in for a second real quick, guys?
Yeah, Eddie, I don't know what happened. You blipped out.
I think we lost him. So I wanted to chime in because somebody asked me what can I do or what can be done. So basically, I'm just going to be very frank with everybody and be very open, because you know what, transparency is what kills all these guys, because that's the one thing they wanted to muddy the water so nobody knew what the hell was going on. But when I declined roughly 4 weeks ago, the lawsuit and said, no, I want my day in court, my lawyers basically came back and said, a non-shooting death case, even though they told me in the beginning they were willing to stand to the end, all of a sudden it was, no, you're on your own. Good luck finding a lawyer, basically. And so I stood my ground and said, you know what, I'll rather walk away with nothing, but I'm not gonna accept their lies and the bullshit. I'd rather walk with nothing and keep my honor clean and my head held high. So today, and you know this, Mike, because all of a sudden, out of the blue, after I released that information on the judge, I got 3 lawyers calling me from my previous law firm after I let them go because they weren't willing to take my case. And so all 3 lawyers were on with me, and it was a 49-minute conversation. So if they decide to release some audio that's snippet here to make me look bad, there's 49 minutes of it, and I want to make sure that's very clear, because the context. You would have loved my conversation because I chewed them all pretty much.
No, you and me both, because the conversations I had with the attorneys yesterday, obviously a couple of them figured out who you were, and I would neither confirm nor deny, but at the same time, it was quite obvious. But yeah, there's some contention there, and I get that. One thing I want to mention too, real quick, Eddie, I know you need to finish your thought as well, so don't go anywhere. Doug, I definitely want to do another show with you in the future. Roger, same. Eddie, same thing. And that way we can maybe just be one-on-one with each other and get into some depth into some of this area that we might want to get back out there. I know Doug and I are both in the upcoming documentary Money Machine that's coming out, and some of the information that has not been revealed before will be seen in the documentary. I will let everybody know now that around the time that the documentary comes out, I will be releasing the internal interview with Eric, which is quite eye-opening, and I'll probably take some heat for that. Everybody thinks I should have released that a long time ago, but there are reasons for that. But that's where we're going. Eddie, go ahead and finish your thought, because you're in mid-sentence when you blipped out.
Right, I'm sorry, bud. Anyway, Doug, I had interviewed people inside New York, a gal at the Nine Fine Irishman. I interviewed employees, because you can't find tourists, but I interviewed people all up and down the Miracle Mile shops in Planet Hollywood. I interviewed a lady at the Bellagio. She didn't work for Bellagio. I couldn't talk to a Bellagio employee. They wouldn't speak. But I did interview a lady that worked at a watch company, real close to that front desk. I'll just say that. And it's 23 minutes long. She didn't say there was only one shooting. And the reason I went there is because of Renee Downs. You know who Renee is, right?
Yep.
Renee is a friend of mine. In fact, I was going to go see her this weekend. Anyway, but I interviewed this lady, and she said Renee's account was accounted perfectly. However, they left. They went and hid and went into a back room and went upstairs. She says there was another shooting around midnight in the same hotel, and she's behind bulletproof glass. Everybody's saying, well, it must have been the fountains going off. No. Or it was people's sandals. No. She's behind bulletproof glass in the back room when the second shooting went off. This was not. Doug, I'll send you the info. You and I need to sit down and have a cup of coffee, my friend.
I just want to say something on that, and we don't know because, you know, this is 3 years ago and we don't have anything and a lot of videotape and stuff. Like I said, I'd love to see that New York stampede in there when this guy said the shot started. That was the stampede, and that's what the reason that security ended up going Metro. We heard on the communication tapes that they did respond Metro there, but they couldn't find nothing. But you know, it's but you know, you got to understand something too. Sometimes when things like this happen, and I'm not saying this was the case here, there, you know, everybody in Vegas, every other 10th person walking around the strip has got a concealed weapon. There are people who take advantage of situations just to be assholes, and you know, hey, I'll pop around off over here to start something else. I mean, you got to keep that in the back of your head too, because there are people that do.
But Doug, I think you were one of the people who broke the story on the shell casings being found in a bathroom at Paris Hotel, correct?
Well, it wasn't only in Paris. I broke that story.
I have a video when I was interviewing a bartender who was terrified for his life. He turned on his phone and started recording because he thought he was going to die. This is before Metro arrived. Paris Hotel is in blackout conditions with the fire alarms going off. Why? Buddy, I've lived here for 58 years. Have you ever seen a hotel on emergency power without a major fire going on? Have you ever seen that? Yeah. I have a 32-second clip of him that he sent me. He texted to me while I'm talking to him. And then he sent me another 32-second clip at 5 o'clock in the morning when they pulled him out from underneath the bar and escorted him at gunpoint, telling him to turn his camera off into the convention center. And you can hear it loud and clear. You and I need to sit down and have a talk.
You know, one thing I want to say before I go, you know, I'd like to get documents and I don't like loose ends. And one of the biggest loose ends I have, not to say, you know, there's a conspiracy because I'm not a conspiracy theorist, is that when the FIT reports came out, and I published this in my stories, they referenced in those FIT reports all the FBI forensic analysis reports on everything. The computers, they were talking about it, the casings. Remember, they matched the casings to the guns that were fired in the room. They do that through the extraction.
I have your answer on that.
Yeah, they did all that. But one thing, we haven't seen anything to this day of any of the FBI forensic analysis reports, any of their investigation. We haven't seen nothing on there. We haven't seen that. And what I'm interested in is, fine, they said they matched the casings that were in the room to the weapons that were fired. Fine. Mm-hmm. Okay. But one thing that we haven't seen is, and you could see in the reports that came out, they were at the hospitals and they did recover bullets and stuff from people who were shot and some of them who were deceased. And they did take projectiles out of vehicles, especially the buses and some of the patrol cars. Right. And I just want to see, just for my own thing, is, did all those projectiles / bullets that could be analyzed, did they all match the weapons in the room? I have yet to see, and we're not going to see.
That is an incredible question.
Actually, I have your answer on that. Here's your answer, Doug. It's a partial answer. It's about 80% of the answer. One, the FOIA request as it relates to Stephen Paddock and all documents as it relates to Stephen Paddock was approved. It's coming. I'm actually negotiating the final part of it, but the girl who just left, Michelle, is the person who actually got the approval. So we're working all of this together. It's 28 CDs of data that's coming out. It's 14,000 pages, and they told us we have another year to go before we get it. I did send in a request asking specifically if that will include, if it's going to include all documents as they relate to Stephen Paddock, will it also include the ballistics as it relates to Stephen Paddock? The answer I got back was slightly ambiguous, and another person contacted us back, or, well, in a roundabout way is a weird way to explain this. But most of the information of the generic of the standard materials that they would release in a normal report, because remember, all we got was that 3-page behavioral analysis unit report through the Las Vegas review panel, which was
let's call it 2 3/4 pages. Let's not kid ourselves.
Exactly. So, and
It's a disgrace.
Do that, but the they're going to put all that into the vault, but this information is not going into the vault, and some of the ballistic information will not be going into the vault, and there's a part of the reason for that. Some of the bullets that were supposed to be tested were never tested, and they just felt like they didn't need them, and that's utterly ridiculous. Now the problem is, documents to back up that story. We won't get those. We won't get the little report where the FBI agent says, well, I went back to the couple to get the bullet, and then they said they had lost it. They're allowing people. I mean, hell, I've got glass from the room. They're allowing people to leave with bullets. It just boggles the mind.
It's a disgrace, because, and I'll tell you, I'll say this, and I hope I'm wrong. You're not going to get half the stuff you think you're going to get. We're not going to get it. I'm telling you. We're not
you're probably right. I don't doubt that.
If we get it. But, I don't know how to say this. This is the worst mass shooting in modern American history. And for some freaking reason, it's forgotten about. Yet, just last week, they're still talking about Sandy Hook and Columbine and all these things all the time. But the Las Vegas massacre, for some reason, nobody wants to talk about anymore. It's like it never happened, and it's the worst mass shooting in modern American history. It's bizarre.
It's also the only shooting that doesn't have an official report that's been released. The only report that was released was the BAU LV panel. That's it. And so there's apparently a reason for that. And part of it was because of who was taking control over which evidence, and the FBI was working as a support role, and whether or not this was going to be classified as a terrorist attack.
Well, good
but that's a whole nother thing for another day. That's a whole nother subject right there.
Good thing I want to say something. Okay.
You mentioned the pictures of the bus.
Yes.
Those pictures of that bus came from a friend of mine, and he's a friend of Mike's as well. He sent them to me, and I went after those buses like a pit bull after a bloody bone. I had a license plate number that came back, doesn't exist. I finally got body cam footage of them going in and taking the people off the bus. Yeah. I actually spoke with a person who wouldn't and can't go into and didn't want to go there. But then we finally got the VIN numbers for those buses. My thing with those buses is I know everything about those buses now. Why can't I find an insurance claim on them? Did the FBI destroy these buses altogether? I should be able to find somewhere where these buses were repaired and replaced and what damage was done. I can't find it anywhere. Maybe you can help me with that.
Doug, do you want those pictures?
I have some stuff. I got to look in the archives that I basically blew up from some of the body cam footages and stuff.
Okay, I'll send them to you. I'll send you that plus the satellite picture I promised you a long time ago too. I'll send you that as well.
I think I said in one of the stories when I published is that you actually saw the police officer there on one of the buses. He's telling the people, "Hey, that's a bullet went in here," and it's a crime scene and stuff like that. Because that'd be very easy on something like that to see the angle those bullets went in. I mean,
I don't know if you've seen the pictures that exist of what those buses look like after the FBI got done with them and moved them out of the lot where they were into the dirt lot. They didn't take a 4x4 section where a bullet was, a 4-inch by 4-inch. No, they took a 8-foot by 3-foot section of the bus out to include the woodwork behind it, the insulate. It is insane what Mike's going to say.
It's ridiculous.
It's going to blow your mind. The damage you saw that they removed inside the hallway is minuscule compared to what they did to these buses. It's going to blow you away.
Remember
Hey,
this.
Doug, I'll text Eddie. Is it cool for me to text
Absolutely.
Doug your phone number?
Absolutely.
That's fine.
Can
You
I
got it.
cover,
Okay.
can I cover real quick, guys? And,
Yeah.
and I just want to cover something real quick, and I obviously we'll save some
Yeah,
of
and
the
then
lawyers.
we'll wrap this up and we'll revisit this again because it sounds like we've got quite a few subjects we can talk about.
Yeah, I realize that some of that lawyer stuff is ongoing because they're trying to talk to me now all of a sudden. But I want to cover it quick because I did and during all this going on, I filed a Department of Justice OID complaint. I also went to the FBI field office and I filed complaints there because of the cozy nature.
Yeah, I saw the one you did.
So I contacted my Marine buddy because I worked with him in the military police unit, and he's the FBI, Department of Justice. And so I went to him and I said, look, I need some help. I went to my former boss. They're all guys in that realm. And said, hey, I got a problem here. I got some information. They put me in contact with Chris McPeak. Now, Chris McPeak was a mutual friend, but he, through mutual friends, but he was the guy that investigated the ammo dealer.
Right.
And so
That's why his name sounds familiar too.
I haven't heard anything back from the OIG or from Washington, but I've been visited a couple times by the FBI, obviously, and they basically told me, "Oh, this is because of money." I asked, I said, "Well, now that COVID's here," I said, "What's your excuse now?" You know, I'm like,
Right.
if this was about money and copycats, because they were afraid of copycats too. I mean, we've already had mass shootings. We had copycats just recently. This is nothing new. It's happening almost every day or every other week here in the country. So, you know, they have no excuse. Where the hell is the FBI at? Other than the fact that they're all investigating Trump and Michael Flynn and all this other stuff. They don't want another black eye. But I don't give a damn. They swore an oath. They need to stand their ground and do their job, because the media has sold out. That's the problem, because Adelson owns RJ, or his family owns RJ, and you know all these other media and Hollywood types. They got connections all around the country. I've got emails from. I went to KUSI here in San Diego. I'm in San Diego finding all this out. Like, how am I finding this out? Because I'm digging. I'm digging where people don't want me to dig, and I don't give a damn. And these lawyers might come back and say, well, this guy was all greedy for himself. Hell no. I've stood my ground from day one. I'm doing it for the families, for the victims, for the past victims of previous incidents, and for the truth, because it matters. And principle does matter, and these guys cannot get away with this. Somebody needs to do their damn job. And I mean, I've seen Twittered the president, everybody, and I know they've heard me. They get 3 years of this shit. They've had to have heard me. I know they know, and they need to do their damn jobs, because I'm not going away. Till the day I die, I'm going to stand my ground, and hopefully I'm not the only one. But if I disappear, so fucking what? Like I told them, I've been shot at enough times that I'm lucky I'm here, and to be here. Maybe I'm here for a reason, but I'm standing my ground, and I appreciate you guys for standing with me, because this needs to be told. And no matter what happens, I'm not trying to derail people's, people need money. I can tell you this real quick, because the lawyers are making, they're trying to make it sound like, oh, well, nobody will get the money and this and that, and MGM might be going bankrupt and this and that. Like, the insurance company is paying for this. So don't let them kid you. They got plenty of money. They still own City Center, Macau. They got a lot of freaking money, and they got a lot of pool and friends, obviously, because they were able to cover the stuff. So don't let them scare you into that bullshit. In fact, hopefully this brings them to the table and gets more money for the families, because that wasn't a negotiation. And this was settled without any negotiating. But I'd still like to know what made Robert Eglett so giddy. What was gotten, because nobody else got anything. What made him so happy that he's wanting to put his family up at MGM?
What made him so happy was not what made him happy. And I blasted him if you read the story I wrote when he had that press conference, when they announced the settlement, is I said, listening to him, is this guy the attorney for the victims, or is he the attorney for MGMRI? He was praising MGMRI when he was the victim's attorney on the settlement. You're absolutely right, Roger. He was ecstatic, but he kept praising MGMRI. I was texting some attorneys and I said, you got to put this on right now because it's live. This freaking guy sounds like he's the attorney for MGM Resorts International and not the attorney for the victims. It was a freaking disgrace, and I said that in the story. I mean, obviously, this guy's going to get a pretty good chunk of money. The attorney's going to get a pretty good chunk, but I just couldn't believe that. I said, 8 people are dead, almost 500 wounded, and this guy's all excited, and all he did was praise MGMRI. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it.
Let's talk about Campos. He got what, 2 condos and $300,000 cash paid out, and the 2 attorneys, $3 million minus their admin fees. I mean, that's more than probably 3,500 of us got, because they offered me chump change, and 40% of that was going to the attorneys. They didn't negotiate for me. They have a judiciary duty to each and every one of us to make sure that we were compensated fairly. And didn't happen. So.
Let's get back to you're right, Roger. You're right. Let's get back to Metro for a second, okay? A police personnel released crime scene photographs of the worst mass shooting in modern American history, the biggest homicide investigation we ever had, compromised the investigation because we all saw Paddock's body, the room, and the guns. This day, we have no answer from Joe Lombardo, and I got a pretty good idea who did it. But we have no answer on Joe Lombardo. He passed it off on a radio. He said something like, 50 people in the chain had it, and I'm saying, that went to the lady from Boston 25 that used to be a reporter out here. But the point being is this: what police officer? I know they did it for money. What police officer worked?
They're gonna pack them over like.
What police officer worked his badge is going to compromise the worst mass shooting investigation in modern American history by releasing crime scene photographs to the press for money, and then later on, the other person that came in, the other reporter, and took the camera in the room and took the picture of the rifles and stuff like that, and you heard not one answer from Lombardo other than, we're never going to be able to find out. They know exactly who did it. It was a staff officer or Sheriff Lombardo, and that is just one thing in this case that is just pisses me off. Destroying a crime scene when you didn't know at that time whether this was a terrorist incident or not allowing the homicide division of the LVMPD to investigate the death of Stephen Paddock. That's investigated by the Force Investigation Team, who the person in charge of that team at the time was Captain Kelly McMahill, who was the wife of Lombardo's undersheriff, Kevin McMahill. And then when I published that story, a couple of weeks later, she's pulled off. She's given another assignment. But the thing is, not everything that happened in this case, from Lombardo running his mouths, the lies, the contradictions, it's you got to understand. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but this is how conspiracy theories breed, because of the bullshit, if I can say that Metro did on this investigation. I mean, it's a freaking disgrace. And nobody out here in the local media was even interested in any of this. It's a disgrace then. It's a disgrace now. And one thing I want to say, if I can, Mike, you still there?
Yeah, but I'm here.
Okay. After the massacre, I got involved. Give me 2 minutes here. I got involved in the investigation of an unsolved double homicide that happened in Las Vegas called the Land Kaufman homicide. It happened in October of 2016. It's still unsolved. A guy and a girl were shot in the head, execution style, in their apartment. And the stuff that I uncovered when I got into this, it's just freaking unbelievable. And you know what? None of this is being covered by the local media. I covered it in about 27, 30 stories. We got a sitting judge in Las Vegas named Melanie Andrews. Okay, she told me in a recorded interview that the murders happened because she was outed as a source of information to vice detectives, and that the wrong 2 people got killed, and it was supposed to be her and her daughter. And she's talking about police corruption. I wrote multiple stories on this, and the Vegas media will not even touch it. And then get load of this. We talk about the stuff that happened in the massacre, the destruction of the crime scene, the releasing of the photographs, the crime scene photographs, the incompetence that happened there. Very similar stuff happened in this investigation. I uncovered it real briefly in 2 days after the crime scene is released of the dead girl's apartment, her name was Sydney Land. She was living there with her boyfriend, Nehemiah Kaufman. Metro was there. The crime scene. It's a double homicide. It's still unsolved to this day. The crime scene analysts leave. The father, who's a firefighter paramedic in Las Vegas, his name is Steve Land. He goes into the apartment to get some of his daughter's stuff because he doesn't want his wife, Connie, going in there because he knew it was going to be gruesome. And he's stepping in the blood in the carpets and looking at his daughter's blood on the wall. And what does he find? He finds evidence left behind by the LVMPD. He picks the evidence up, or letters, some other stuff, and I published this in Story. He gives it to the homicide investigator, who at the time, and from understand there's 2 of them. There's Mitchell Dosh and there's Jared Grimmett. And by the way, Jared Grimmett was the lead homicide detective on Las Vegas Massacre. His name is in all those reports. On the top, if you see it, it says Jared Grimmett. So he finds this stuff in the room, the exact room where his daughter was murdered, assassinated, bullet in the head. They leave behind evidence. And he turns it over to Detective Grimmett from Metro. And then get a load of this. In 2018, Sheriff Joe Lombardo's office authorized the homicide detective to talk to Crime Watch Daily, one of these Crime Watch shows that are on television. And you know what they did? I've never seen anything like this in my life. They released crime scene photographs, including photographs of Sydney Land's body that was played on television. And this Detective Grimmett was on television talking about the DNA evidence they found that was basically useless because so many people in the apartments. They showed all the crime scene photographs, what the inside of that house looked like. The same thing that they did after the massacre. I mean, you know, I look at it this way. Is this just a sheer incompetence? Is that what this is? You release crime scene photographs of a double homicide that's still unsolved. Picture of the girl's body. It was all over television. They don't take evidence out of the crime scene. They leave it there that the dead girl's father has to find. When I did that story, you know what people would tell me? The Vegas media are going to be all over him because he's a firefighter paramedic in Las Vegas to get a statement from him. Nobody's touching this story. And I'm just bringing this up because there's so many parameters that are the same in this unsolved murder that happened over at Massacre. To me, it looks like, you know, continual incompetence at the very least, and there's a lot more to this case. Anyway, anybody interested, there's like 27 stories on the Land Kaufman murders. I wrote for the Multiple Examiner, and just I want to plug myself here, Mike, for a second. Appreciate it.
Doug, your story on Judge Tobiasen was unbelievable. The judge, and I can't for the life of me recall her name right now, who got this case in front of the LVMP or in front of the Supreme Court and got it overturned and made sure they released all this information. When they arrested her, shortly thereafter, I contacted her office.
Who are you talking about, Mike? Who are you talking about?
The judge, this is Eddie again, I'm sorry.
Okay.
The judge who, not Judge Tobiasen, the judge that I can't for the life of me remember her name, that they got this information for Metro to release. They said, she said you have to release this. Whoever that was, I can't remember her name. She ended up being arrested for a domestic violence shortly before Christmas in 2018.
You're right. I can't remember her name, but you're absolutely right. That's the one that when Lombardo was fighting with his attorneys that he hired not to release the stuff that from the lawsuit from the Associated.
I contacted her office. I'm not going to say I contacted her. I talked to her office. I talked to her legal counsel, her clerk, and made her aware of your story. I received through emails and phone calls. She was blown away at what was taking place. She had already recused, and she gave me up to date who is in charge of this case now, to the judge it is now. And it's still an open case. It's not closed. It's still open.
Which case?
All they're doing is collecting fees. The case for the missing evidence is still an open case. It's not closed.
Can I chime in real quick? This is Roger. Doug, you know I followed that story and I befriended Sydney's mom. I think they're great people. I can't believe what they've gone through. And I just want to say, I want to make this clear. This is a leadership issue. And it boils down to that at the top. And this goes to the top. The problem here is, you know, there's a big circle jerk going around. Brian Sandoval went to work for MGM over in China. He left shortly after James Marin did. That was all quieted. But you got the sitting governor during the time that this has all gone on with Route 91, then goes to work for MGM.
Right.
You got the father, George Togliatti. Whether any of these people did, you know, I don't know nothing about the guy other than his profile. But you know, whether they're good people or not, the circles are a problem, and it's the same names that come up over and over again. And Sydney Land's story, I know you covered this, but you know, the whole Molly Mall deal and the pimps and the prostitution stuff and the rings that were going on during that case and the improper relationships. I just want to say, you know, I'm not out against any local cops, FBI. I mean, these guys were amazing. They went in and did their job. This is a leadership issue, a complete failure. And how, you know, Sislyak runs, you know, on the coattails of all this, and then Joe gets reelected because he's got the money from the casinos because he's carrying their freaking water. These guys are carrying each other's water, and it's a problem.
Roger, I think you mispronounced Sucks a Lot's name.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've
likes to call him Sissy Quack.
I've since found out that he made his money off of suing McCarran Airport because they were invading his airspace. You know, I mean, like
$11 million.
Well, you know, you can pay this guy $11 million or whatever the amount was, but you can't even take care of the damn victims, and that's my goal at the end of the day.
Hey, Roger, ponder this.
Yes,
with everything that happened with the massacre. Not only did Judge Tobias and I interviewed her, and she did a lot of things that are questionable, and she's under investigation right now by the commission. But you know, she was receiving confidential information from about this double homicide. According to her, I got her on tape and in emails, and I put this in stories from guess who? LVMPD homicide detective Jared Grimmett. Why the hell was he releasing confidential information about her? And there's a whole story. You read a story. And another thing, okay? She told me in the recording interview that she was giving information, and this is in the story, so I'll talk about it, to vice detectives about underage clubs, you know, patronized by off-duty Metro officers, run by pimps, and all this type of stuff. According to Judge Tobiasen, she was giving information to FBI Special Agent Kevin White from the Las Vegas field office. Now, you got to listen to this. According to Tobiasen, she told me that the agent White told her there came a time when his boss, who was the number 2 guy at the time in the Las Vegas FBI division of the Las Vegas FBI, his name was Patrick Brodsky. According to Tobiasen, Special Agent White told her that Brodsky told him to stop talking to the judge because she was giving him information about corruption within Metro's vice unit. And according to Judge Tobiasen, Special Agent Kevin White told her the person who wanted this thing quiet that called up Brodsky, who was the number 2 guy under Aaron Rouse at the time, was Lombardo's number 3 guy at the time, the assistant sheriff, Todd Fasulo. Now, that is astounding. She told me that on the record. I pulled out the stories. But get a load of this. In 2017, after the massacre, Todd Fasulo, the assistant sheriff, retires. And where does he go to work? Wynn Resorts, making 6 figures as a security executive. And guess what happened in May of that year? 6 months after he goes. Patrick Brodsky, for some reason, retires from the FBI, and guess where he goes to work? With Todd Fasulo over at Wynn Resorts, security executive, making 6 figures, and they're both there to this day. Now, this stories that I've been writing on these Land Coffin murders and Judge Tobiasen, people have got to read them, because it's not over with. And like I said, my new forum for investigation and analysis is going to be my podcast when it comes up. It's called Truth and Consequences with Doug Papa. I'm not finished with any of these stories, but yeah, Roger, you're right. It's a leadership problem, but you know something? If all people can be believed, something really stinks out here in Las Vegas. Something really stinks, and we're never going to get to the bottom of it. And one more thing that you brought up is Morley Mall, Jamal Rashid. Okay, this guy was supposedly a 12-year pimp running girls out here for 12 years. He's a music producer, lives out in California, and he was under investigation for years by the FBI. There's all kinds of allegations that he was paying off Metro Vice detectives who were working for him to go after other pimps, to target them. And last year, at the end of last year, you know what happened? After this 5-6 year investigation, the FBI, the U.S. Attorney's Office, decides to make a deal with Jamal Rashid, Morley Mall, and it's because of everything going on with the coronavirus, the sentencing hasn't been finished. But this guy admits to being a 12-year pimp. No Metro cop was ever indicted for corruption. And you know what? They let him plead not to sex trafficking. They gave him a plea of running an illegal establishment for criminal purposes. He's not even a convicted sex offender. And he's still out on the street because he's supposed to be sentenced, I think it was supposed to be in March, April, and because everything going on in federal court, it's been postponed. But the rumor is he's not going to spend about a month in jail. When you look at all this stuff and it starts entangling like an octopus, you got to stop asking yourself, like, what the hell's going on? This guy's been trafficking women for 12 years, and he's not even convicted. He gets a plea agreement.
Hey, Doug, you want to hear some extra BS? In the midst of all this coronavirus crap, on 4/17 of 2020, the remitter issue caused case closed on Margaret McCletchy and the Review Journal. The whole thing's done now. It closed on 4/17/2020.
Which one? Which case was that?
For information that, I remember her name, Judge Stephanie Miley.
Right. Stephanie Miley was
information for us. God bless her. I just pulled up all that info on my computer. The case closed too. 4/17. Ain't that something? Undercover of COVID.
All right, guys, let's do this. We're at the 2:30 mark. Let's go ahead and wrap this up. And we've got a lot of more stories to apparently talk about. So this is actually pretty cool. So I'm glad, Doug, I'm super stoked that you came on board tonight. That's awesome. And if you want to do this again and get your story out as well, and I know you got your podcast coming out too, I'll be more than happy to help you promote that and all that good stuff. But let's go ahead and wrap this up for tonight. And then I'm going to come back on tomorrow and go back over some of the information that we've discussed. If any one of you want to come back on, you're more than welcome to do it. I've got two interviews tomorrow. I think sometime in the afternoon I'll probably do it. So just watch the channel. You'll see when it comes up, and I'll contact you and just let you know if you want to come on. Any one of you guys are more than welcome to come on board. And then we'll go from there. But go ahead and Doug, let everybody know how they can see your stories and where they can reach you and all that good stuff.
The stories on the massacre and the first 27, 30 stories on the unsolved Lane Kaufman murders. Baltimore Post-Examiner. You go on their website, pull down columnist, and then you'll get my archive of almost 300-400 stories I've written from over the years. But my new form right now is going to be on my podcast when I get rolling. That's going to be Truth and Consequences with Doug Pop. I got some stuff up on YouTube, some small stuff, and that's going to be my way because I'm getting tired of people editing stuff when I talk to them, and it's a lot easier for me to just get in front of a microphone by myself or with some people that I've lined up and just talk about the stuff that I uncover. And that's going to be my new forum. So I appreciate it, Mike. Man, I didn't think we'd be talking for 2.5 hours. Just remember this, guys. It's not over till it's over. And my condolences to the families and the survivors of the Las Vegas massacre, because I don't really think we're ever going to get all our answers answered, at least in my lifetime.
Thank you, Doug. Appreciate that. And the good news is just so you guys know, obviously, we haven't stopped. We haven't stopped looking for answers. It may not be at the fast pace that it was in the beginning, but as you can tell, we're still boots on the ground. Eddie's got boots on the ground. Roger, all four of us were all still trying to do stuff as in our own way as much as we can, and it all comes together to to get answers to questions that
You want to hear
bring up
something
questions.
ironic, Mike? Here's something ironic. Let me get in out of that siren.
What, the siren in the background?
Today is 5/8/2020, 58.
Yeah,
I honor and remember
sure is.
each and every one of them. And tomorrow morning, when I wake up, I'll be posting Jessica Klampjack's birthday, who passed away October 1, 2017 from cancer. So may they all rest in peace, and that's why we do this.
Absolutely.
They will not die in vain.
I'd just like to chime in last thing. I'm not giving up. You guys already know I'm like a freaking pit bull in a china shop trying to raise hell. And I hope the families know that I'm doing it for the right reason. I'm not out for self-greed. I want to be taken care of just like everybody else, but I'm not going to do it at their expense. I am raising hell for the right reasons. And I guess I got an interview with a major news reporter tomorrow. So we'll see if they can keep covering this up. But transparency is and us talking is what is going to expose any of this. The silence and letting it go away is what they want, and I'm not quitting. And those lawyers, unless they're taking care of everybody and meeting my very minimal demands, I'm not going away. I'm not going away, and I'm going to keep digging and fighting. So I bless you all, but don't believe everything they might want to tell you, because I got your best interest. I got your back, and I told you all from day one I was going to be the last guy standing, and I'm going to stand and fight for the families, and I'm going to keep my word and my honor on that. Number 5.
Sounds good. And everybody, just so you know, we're going to do more of these. I'm still in my transition as well, trying to get some other stuff done. And Doug, you've got to, until you get your thing rock and rolling, you're more than welcome to use this pulpit if you need to. And I'll give you freedom of brain. I'm not going to edit you or anything. If you need to do that option is there for you. But anyway, I appreciate everybody coming, and I will let you know when the next show comes on, and we will explore some more territory, and we'll revisit this subject that we started with tonight tomorrow to give you more in-depth information, so you guys can take a look at it and show it to your friends and what have you, and see exactly what happens behind the scenes, guys. So more stuff's coming. The movie will be the documentary is coming out soon, and you'll see some other stuff, and I'll be releasing a lot of behind the scenes stuff on my investigation as well. Some stuff you guys have seen part of, but you didn't really see all of it. So you get to see the funny stuff. You'll get to see the really weird stuff, things that just we couldn't get out earlier. But so it should be pretty cool. I think Doug's got a lot of stories too that we can probably share. That'll be pretty interesting. And we both actually worked, not with or for, but we both worked around with Catherine in the bar and stuff, and we probably have some stories we can share there too. But anyway, I appreciate everybody coming. Thank you very much, Doug. Thank you, Roger, Eddie. Thank you all, and we will come back and do this again sometime.
Okay, guys. Good night.
Good night. Take care.